All right, so the next segment here is going to be about advanced console management and what that means to us and what that means to our products and how they deliver that in the different platforms, the rack mount and the smaller form factor. What we're looking at here is a dashboard, and the dashboard is available in all the products. It's a built-in web server, and these are widgets that will show you what is relevant to you as a user or a group. So if you're going to log into a downstream Opengear device, you're going to see a UPS system, port activity. You'll see if someone else is already in a port, which can be very helpful. You can tell if there was any auto responses, which is also another word for alerting and monitoring. Any of those alerts triggered, environmental status, things like this will be available to you at a glance. We have people customize this and show them just all the serial ports or just all the network hosts or a variety of things. So you can pull in however much data you want, and if you want, you can go downstream and look at this and see it as soon as you log in. We're going to discuss the serial port first because this is, at the core of it, what we do best. So in looking at the serial port settings here, you're going to give the serial port a name, enable console server mode, and then choose from some of the features that you can apply to this serial port. You can have logging bidirectional, everything, just output. If you don't want to capture your clear text password going to your target Cisco F5 or Riverbed product, you can prevent that just by having output only. You can disable unsecure protocols like Telnet. You can enable raw mode or RFC 2217, which is a raw connection with hardware flow control. A lot of users in the lab don't ever want to be prompted for a password, so you can disable unauthenticated Telnet here. You can check that off. So down here, you can replace the backspace with a control 127. You can do a single concurrent connection because by default we allow for multiple users to be logged into the same device at the same time, the same serial port. So for training and collaboration and troubleshooting, if you need to get TAC on the phone or if you want to get a newbie and you want to look over and snoop over their shoulder or work together, you can do that. Or if someone in previous generations of these types of products, if someone left their desk while logged into a session, no one else can get into it. This, you don't have to worry about that anymore.
Can anyone type, or is there a process to boot the active user? Or
You can boot the active user if you want. You can get in and kill it, the port from the command line, and knock him off.
I mean, if several people are logged in at once watching.
Yeah, tell them not to type.
Okay.
It multiplexes the streams together.
Yeah, you could confuse the target device if everybody is sending commands at once. It won't know which one to listen to. But
I use Conserver for that purpose now, but it has you have to, only one person can type, and there's a preemption.
yeah, we do work with Conserver. A lot of our larger installs have a component of Conserver.
Yeah.
And we've seen, like SolarWinds and Xenos and Nagios, we see the same things at the same customers. So that's why our products have been accepted, nicely into those different environments. All right, so it's a bit about the serial port setup in here and what we offer for that for connectivity. Now, when you want, you can come directly to the device, click on Manage, and access the serial port from the web interface, which works great if you have an iPad or iPhone or something and you don't want to open up the SSH terminal or something to it. You can get directly into the web in here. And this doesn't have a rollback buffer, so you can copy and paste a whole bunch of stuff in there and have it work well. At least I haven't found a rollback buffer yet, is there?
There would be one. What the actual size is off the top of my head.
Yeah, we've tried and we haven't found a way to hit it yet, but it's a shell in a box, so works out really well. Let's take a look here. So we allow you to access these devices based on your credentials. So we start with the users and groups. We offer up admin users, FTP users, PPTP if you wanted a road warrior and VPN in, as well as dial-in and PM shell. Now PM shell is the port manager shell. And what that is we have a very fancy web interface for a product that some people, they say, I just want shell access. I'm at a command line prompt all day long. I don't open up the browser for stuff, So if you want, you can make them a PM shell user. And when they log in via the command line, they're going to see the PM shell. I'm just going to type it in here. They'll see the ports that they can connect to, and that's it. So they get access. Here's a menu. Click on the device, click ~M to get back to it, to the menu again, and that's what you see. So.
On the serial port setup page,
Mhm.
You had the various TCP connection options. Is that, the first port is port 2000?
Telnet's 2000, yeah, and it's all, you can change the default TCP-based port ranges. Telnet's 2000, SSH 3000, raw data is 5000, unauthenticated Telnet, I believe, is 6000.
Can I assign an IP address to each?
You can alias the IP addresses per port. It's done from,
I can hit each serial port at port 22 on different IPs?
yeah.
Awesome.
So you wait, what'd you say? You put port 22?
So I like to give a 48 port terminal server.
Yeah.
Different
49
IP.
IP addresses.
Yep.
Okay.
One for each port and then the box itself.
Yep.
Out of the box, I don't think we support that, but I'm sure that we could configure something with firewall rules on board to do that. Yeah, we've got IP tables on
Yeah,
board.
on the back end, it's IP tables.
We had this discussion last night.
There's an echo here, so.
Actually pretty elegant.
So the users, you can determine who has access to which serial ports. If you only had access to a couple of ports, that's all you would get. In here, you can determine what groups they have access to, and if you're going to do an SSH key-based authentication as well. Individual dial back, so if you had a lake house that you had to dial in from and you had a security protocol and it would ring back your landline and attach to your modem, you could definitely do that here. Even though it's an unlikely scenario, it is possible to have roaming and user-based dial back. You can limit which network hosts. So as well, if you're going to integrate the STT connector software client that would allow you to tunnel through to these network hosts, this is a way to segment and say these people have access to this product or they don't, and even down to the PDU level. So because we support serial ports, network hosts, and PDUs for management access, we can also isolate who has access to it, make sure the right people are touching the right equipment.
Maybe I missed this. Maybe you're right. I was going to ask that exact question.
We do TACAX, Radius, LDAP, Kerberos with a local scheme for failover. So if something goes terribly bad and your Radius server is not available, or revert to a local user list. So you always have a super admin access to get in there.
Waiting for y'all to tell us you run KVM on it, and we can put a VM farm on there.
Let's see here. We're going to look at.
You see Linux support KVM?
So,
Yeah, hyper-virtualization.
so part of advanced console management, which is a section we're going to cover now, and in the next segment, we're going to cover the cellular out-of-band and the centralized management. So I'm going to focus on advanced console management now, and then we'll move into the next section for the cellular questions and things like that. So port logs. Yeah, for the paranoid people and the compliance people, port log is extremely important. Now you can send that to the local USB flash on these devices or to a remote off-box syslog. Each one of the different serial ports and network hosts that have monitoring enabled can have different syslog facilities attached to them as well. So let's see here. We're going to come back to these other sections during the next segment. So let's talk about auto response. This is a part of our product that allows for alerting and monitoring. Did I lose my connection? There we go. What was it? Someone said it was Comcast?
That's a customer.
Here's an overview of some configured auto responses that we put into this demo system to just kind of show you how people are using it. The high temperature alert, low temperature alert, door contact sensors for your daughter sneaking out, temperature being hot, the configuration backup, ping reboot.
I've got 2 daughters.
So you need 2 of these.
You want 2 of these?
You've got one that's got an electric shock.
You could probably turn on an electric fence controller.
Now we're talking. Yep.
How about an embedded cell phone jammer?
She'll look so confused, you don't know where to go. I can't Facebook my friends. Dad, the internet is down. We're returning to room.
So is that legal in the UK?
Yeah, you can't. Yeah.
It's child abuse. Just get stop Facebook from reporting your own now.
Our home router actually shuts off at 11 o'clock at night. Just to,
All right, so we're going to talk about the auto response. And this is the accessible programmability within the product that some people would would shy away from building their own scripts and things like this, and allows them to do it from a user level and not necessarily an engineering level. These actions, each one of these auto responses can be set up to run the condition check. There's really 3 parts to it: the trigger actions and then resolve it. They can be run on a repeat basis, or you could have it disabled at specific times with a calendar for weekends or things when situations may be different for your environment. The condition checks that we have built into the device at the moment are environmental. You can check which sensor you want. You can have values above and below with the threshold. Digital inputs, that's the door contact sensors, the smoke and fire and water leak detection. The UPS power supply, and this can tell you a lot. And we have a lot of people using this in the campus and, like I said, that small airport, medium airport environment, where you can tell if someone plugged in a vacuum cleaner into your small APC, or an air conditioner or floor buffer, and something that they shouldn't have done. You can tell right away. Now, we also work with the power supply to tell the rail current, the temperature, and the input voltage on the DC power supplies. The UPS power status, if this is on street, if it's on low battery, if it kicks back over to line, it can be alerted. Anytime someone logs into a serial port, you can be alerted. If that's part of the condition is no one should log into that, this is a way to get alerted if someone tries that. The serial signal, this is if someone, depending on which product you have, it's going to be CTS or DSR usually. Cisco routers and switches are different, but you can check on the value trigger on change. So if someone unplugs the console cable, you can be alerted. It's extremely helpful if you have products in a shady area where people are unplugging things. Also, it makes you seem like a real overlord and God if you know what's going on at all times. Let's see here. So serial pattern. This is where you're going to catch an expression like Raman mode or Armon or whatever you may want to come across. Match it on receive and apply it to the different serial ports. We can do ping detect reboots. So when you have an address to ping, you can trigger the action to switch the remote power controller. The cellular data, this one doesn't have it in it, but we can bring one up. We can tell you if you're, how many kilobits and megabits you're using and if it's outside of your plan or outside of the normal range. The custom check, this is a way to drop in a script to execute. So if you had something that you wanted to build and drop in, you can do it from here, or you can go into the command line and do it and save it via the command line. SMS commands, this is where if you can send it a text message if you want that says connect and then connect the radio, or send it a text message and have it perform an action.
Or reply with some information. I've seen this used by customers who are putting units out remotely and they're getting dynamic IP addresses, and they're finding they're having trouble with their dynamic DNS host names. And so what they set up is an auto response where they send an SMS and they get an SMS back with the IP address, which is kind of neat.
But we've seen that a lot, actually. People are adopting, instead of the traditional 1FBs or single modem out at a remote customer location, for even carriers to monitor their own equipment and their customers, they're adapting this and they're able to just send it a text message and bring the radio up. Instead of using what would be considered a traditional failover, they want to trigger it by text. So.
Because you can't establish a 3G connection to a 3G device. It must start the connection.
Yep.
Correct.
So.
But the SMS is always on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Text it. I guess it saves you money as well because.
Saves you a lot of money.
Yeah.
And even the carriers are using it. The people that are adopting this technology are Sprint, Verizon, and AT&T, which is, to them, you would think it wouldn't matter, but apparently they have their own internal limits on how much data they should be using. Or they're really prudent. So.
Is this interface where Stretch did his programming about don't overwrite Flash?
Most likely. I'd have to go back and look.
If there's a command line, he probably did it from the command line. But
He was watching for, remove file or you should.
Oh, yeah, that was a pattern match. Yeah, that's what he was using, was a pattern match.
So it just blocks it then? Or?
Yeah, if you try to format Flash or whatever, this thing would answer the question something else.
Oh,
You can't script it.
I like it.
Very cool.
So once a condition has been met, or the check condition has been met, we can trigger these actions. So we can, we could reboot a device by turning off outlets on and on, off and on. Send SNMP traps upstream or Nagios events. So you can trigger just a single isolated Nagios event or SNMP trap. You can send them all at the same time. So you can get an email, an SMS text. Some of the stuff that we're looking at to further this in the future, future talk here, is we'd like to be able to interpret SMS messages as well. So if you were to send it out to a variety of technicians, one of them must respond, right? So that's some of where this is moving ahead here, which is on the engineering roadmap. So with an SMS gateway interpreter, we could send, say you were all technicians, and on Memorial Day weekend, you all got a message that said, hey, come in and fix this, and everyone looks at their phone, and someone brave enough steps up, maybe the new one on the block says, I got it, then it'll be interpreted back out through all the systems to raise the conditions like low, and then allow it. So someone can interpret, I'm on it. So that's where we're going with it. You could probably do it from the command line now, but it's future stuff.
I may have missed this. Can you cause an event to be triggered upon receipt of an SMS?
Yes.
Yes,
You were just talking about?
Yep.
Okay.
you can, yeah.
If you were to trigger a custom script, then can you pass the text of the SMS?
That gets into a bit of trouble, yeah.
I know that's kind of what he was talking about.
Yeah. We don't really have a good mechanism at the moment to pass information between the action and the trigger, but that is something we're working on.
So, but for example, you could, if you have a door controller on the street, or it connects to the maglock of like a remote server room, and you have your remote hands who's not badged in, you could literally, he calls you on the phone, yeah, let me open the door. You could text it and have it unlock the door for him.
Yeah. You can tell it which door.
Well, I mean, there's only 2 connections.
All right, so this is,
How do you lock down who can send a text, or is there source filter on this?
What you can do is
No, but I mean, no, it's a valid use case. But I'm just wondering if you can.
you can put a password in the SMS, in the message.
String in the SMS
Yeah.
text.
and also
That's the case I've
It
seen.
does look for a string.
You can configure that, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
as well, iClid,
Yeah.
you can do the incoming caller line ID. So you can determine what number is calling or texting that
It's
would be,
spoofable though.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
So that's a bit about the auto response in here. Do you guys have any questions about this portion of the
You
product?
have to know your custom command too, though.
Yeah.
When you get set up.
So
you have
down
to
now,
pass
let's try
password
VA
to it
start.
or something.
I had a question for the previous part of the product.
Sure, yeah.
Is there support for Zabbix proxies or Zabbix node support? Or is it the question over from another user?
Sure, okay.
You've had a Zabbix proxy in place for a while.
Yeah, no, we've discussed it, but we haven't actually implemented it, no.
Yeah, okay,
No.
thank you.
So on the setting up the triggers, presumably, and the example was being given about Stretch's site where if you try and do format flash,
Yep.
it recognises a string, steps in and says, no you don't. Okay, and that's fine. If he wants to be able to format the flash, right, is his login not subject to the trigger checks, or does he have to go in as admin and disable the trigger in order to go and be able to do the command that would normally be stopped? So in other words, is there some kind of
Is it
role-based
user
trigger control?
No, it would be because it's based off the serial port. So what's coming across the serial port? So it's whatever's coming out of that target device. So in that case, there's no user delineation. It's what's spitting out. So the characters we take and interpret, and we say, hey, this matches something. We recognize it.
I suppose if that triggered a script that queried who was logged in before
Yeah.
taking action.
That's one way to get around that, yeah.
I'm just thinking there could be scenarios where, day to day, sure, you want to block certain bad commands, but there are
Yeah.
times when you, honest to God, need to issue those. So how
Yeah.
do you issue them if you've configured the thing? So it looks like there's kind of a workaround you have to put in place to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
You could trigger
But
it based on a user login, though,
Disable it and then
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
You've got to
yeah.
do a two-step process.
with a custom script.
You could set up a custom script on the root user logging in
Yeah.
that disables the pattern matching alert
And then
for a period of time.
restores it on its exit.
Yeah,
Something like
Yeah.
that.
But that would be disabling it on the box, not
Yeah.
for that particular session.
that's right, yeah. But if you turned on mutually exclusive users, no one else could log in anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with the advanced console management theme, we're going to talk a little bit about the network interface here. We do have products that have internal wireless now as well, wireless access point, which will be a little bit later in the presentation. But we have a primary and secondary probe address. If these two fail and traffic stops, that's what's going to trigger the failover connection. So the failover could be one of the redundant Ethernet ports. So if you had an alternate path or a broadband connection or dual home, instead of having cellular, because there was no signal, you can switch it over to a redundant path. So you have redundant path or the dial in, dial out, as well as the cellular. And that's primarily triggered by this failover. Let's see, moving through here. We can talk a bit about date and time. We are an NTP time server, and we do support these products. We do offer a Garmin GPS antenna, so the ones that are on the desk that have the dual antenna feeds. You can put it on the auxiliary port for the antenna to get a really good outdoor GPS signal, if you wanted.
Is GPS in here?
Yes,
On the
it's
3G modem.
It's on the 3G modem. But if this is going to be in the trunk of your car or buried underground, you're going to want an external antenna.
Yep.
Is that true of the CDMA ones as well?
Yes. Yeah, so the dual antenna feeds, there is a GPS antenna that we do sell.
It's going to be an NTP source. Stratum zero. Stratum.
Let's see here.
The
So
question is, can you integrate it into your dashboard clock?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
You're very fried electronics.
Consider the source, yeah.
So we'll talk a bit about firewall and services next. So we have a full built-in firewall once we expose ourselves to the internet with the cellular side of our products. We had to revert to the core with the firewall. Engineers had to come back in and rework everything a bit and make sure that it was completely secure and you could lock down absolutely everything. And we have forwarding, masquerading. You can set up custom rules. We have trusted networks for only certain serial ports. You could disable or enable all the services that you want, change all the ports that you want, all from the really flexible web interface. And a lot of this stuff people could, in the past, have had to hack together or do something else, but we put it all together in one package here.
Yeah.
Sorry. Said that out loud.
So as you can see, it's really programmable. And if you're going to deploy a lot of these products and you have a like template or a cookie cutter type template, it may be wise to build out one of them and then send them, copy the config over to other devices. So we have the configuration backup where it'll copy everything, keys and everything. You can just grab the XML file if you want and change the IP address. You can send config commands to script to the device to build them out. We found people have a wide variety of different ways they attack mass deployment. But it's highly configurable. Once you have all that, adapting it, and you're going to send it out to 300 branch locations or different areas. This is another important flexible thing to have, is to be able to scale. So firewall time, date, services, we've gone over some of this stuff. You mentioned the Nagios. So what we can act as, let me bring this screen up here. We can enable the local Nagios service and be an NRPE agent in the NSCA client, I guess, as well. So you can put in all the Nagios details here, run the checks local. You can load your own checks, whatever ones they may be that's relevant for your install, and then trigger those as well.
That's really cool.
Some of this other stuff is just simple administrative things. We have really pretty graphs for the UPS systems to be able to tell what's going on with them. All this information is available upstream as well. So if you did just have UPS systems that had a serial port, you can now send that data to SolarWinds or Xenos. We log it all. We provide reporting for it all. Let's take a look here. So we can talk about SMTP, SMS. Those are fairly straightforward. Let's look at managed devices. So how these products come together and integrate UPSs and PDUs and do the power shedding and do some of the other integrated advanced console management is with tying together the ports, the power ports that are plugged into the target network devices. And in here we have some old Cisco equipment that we've linked up with PDUs on different outlets. What that does, what that allows us to do is once you set up that organization in here, and it can be, dual power if they're dual feed, dual PDU, different PDUs. You can set that up in here. Once you've correlated these devices, that allows you to do a hotkey, which was set up in the serial port settings, to power cycle the devices from within just a shell session. So if you're into a device, something's wrong, you have one intelligent place to go to be able to do power commands. So from the prompt, we can reboot it. You don't have to go then find out what PDU was that hooked to and cross your fingers that it was the right port. So, you know, if you didn't have the Excel spreadsheet or whatever was originally created to help organize this stuff, this is a way to tie it together, and you can log in from your iPad at night in bed and, you know, reboot something if need be, or have it do it on its own with a ping detect or something else. Let's take a look. So we log locally. We can trigger power from the web interface as well, send that out to the different PDUs.
So do those PDUs have to be directly attached?
They can be SNMP, serial, or if there's a USB one. I don't think I've seen a
You just
USB one.
pre-provision the mappings as an IP address plus port.
It's when you enter the device as say an SNMP PDU, and we'll use Server Tech as an example. We'll take a look here. You enter them into the network host field, which is the place to enter the TCP hosts that are going to be via console port,
Yep.
or an SNMP-based PDU.
So is the idea here that you map out the PDU and all of its outlets,
Yeah.
and then all of your serial ports, and just tie those two together?
Yep. That's right. Yep.
Those serial ports.
Yep. So the idea of a managed device is that it's something that is behind the Opengear that you're looking after. It'll have connections such as network ports, serial ports, and power ports. And you group those together logically in the configuration, and then that idea pervades through the whole config system and UI of that logical device that you're looking
Will
after.
that power mean power down multiple outlets for multiple power?
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, so once I'm going to make this device what we call RPC, is an engineering term for PDU.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's an Australian thing or...
No, it threw me as well.
Is it?
Yeah. Well, I see RPC and I think Remote Procedure Call, being a software developer. But it's Remote Power Controller is what it stands for.
Baytech calls their power strips RPC.
Okay, yep. That's probably where it came from, actually. Yeah.
So yeah, once you identify it as a PDU, you'll be able to add it in the back end in the power setup here. So here's a Server Tech Sentry, and you can choose, it's an SNMP controlled Server Tech with variable outlets. And the community, let's just say, is public. And we can log the connections, and we can provide a username.
It can be super secure, fault private. Yeah, exactly. Fault private. Much harder.
We can log it if we want and click apply. So what this will do is it'll integrate it into the system as outlets that then can be correlated with the network hosts and the serial ports. So it's a portion of our what was originally called PowerMan in the open source community, which I forget the name of the lab that brought it in, but it was vital to them. They were supporting supercomputers, and they had PDUs from every vendor on the planet, and they wanted an easy way to manage it all. So, let's see here, where are we on time? We'll let that PDU load. Firewall services. From the internal terminal. I may need to move on. Any other questions about the basic console management features or how this works? Okay. So now we have two PDUs that we have tied into the system.